Welcome to California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. I'm glad you're with us today. We are joined by Alan Lowenthal. He's a member of the California State Senate. He is running for the U.S. Congress, and I want to speak with you about that run. You traditionally have run from a base in Long Beach on the Los Angeles County side of this region. You're now running also in Orange County. Talk to us about that. It's new territory for you.
Well, first of all, it's very good. You know, historically, there's been a wall between, or a line between Orange County and Los Angeles County. I think this, with 60% of the district approximately in Los Angeles, 41% in Orange County, it really means that these two counties will be united. One of the things, and remember, this district in Orange County is Stanton and Cypress and Westminster and Garden Grove, which working families.
But also traditionally more ethnic.
That's right. Large Vietnamese American population, large Latino population, emerging population. Orange County is changing demographically. It is not the same county that it was 5-10 years ago. And I think that's what's emerging in this district.
You mentioned the Vietnamese population, which traditionally had been strongly aligned with the Republican Party. But I recently interviewed a UC Riverside professor, Karthik Ramakrishnan, and he did the National Asian American Survey that just came out, and it suggested that the Vietnamese community is no longer monolithic for Republicans. They are starting to move towards the Democrats. Is that what you're seeing?
One of the most fascinating parts of my campaign has been the large numbers of young Vietnamese Americans who are volunteering on the campaign, actually playing a major role on the campaign. And what it is you're right, Brad, that the first generation that left Vietnam under horrible conditions, boat people,
literally.
That's right. Were strongly conservative, strongly anti-communist. Even this younger generation coming up has real strong feelings about the lack of human rights that exists in Vietnam, but they are becoming, because there's such an emphasis on education in the Vietnamese community, they are becoming far more open-minded, and many of them want to return to their communities, want to play a leadership role, but do not want to be identified in the same way as a conservative. They really want to reflect what they consider the needs of their community, and that's for health care, that's for education, taking care of their seniors, their
Which is why, presumably, you're seeing more of a Democratic tilt now on the Vietnamese side.
That's exactly what's happening.
Now, the Latino vote, we know, has been trending Democratic for years and continues to trend as such. The challenge, though, is will they vote?
That's exactly
right. Will members of the Latino community get out to vote?
That's exactly right.
Their numbers are increasing.
Yes.
What do you see? Do you see an energy?
I think that there is an emerging energy. I think that a lot will depend upon whether the president and the presidential candidate on the Republican side are able to energize the base in California. We're not really in play at a national level, and so we don't get as many ads at the national level that
I haven't seen a single one ad.
Brad, we're not going to see a lot of it. So it's really going to be dependent upon people like myself to bring out that vote. We will do well. The more there's a large voter turnout, the more that
the better Democrats do.
That's
I mean,
exactly
that's
right.
axiomatic.
That population will vote if there is a large turnout.
Now, there's no doubt that you're trying to compete for the center, but let me tell you what I'm hearing as well on the street in terms of the Alan Lowenthal congressional race. From progressives, I'm hearing Alan Lowenthal has been very strong on many of our issues, but we're concerned about high-speed rail.
Yes.
Alan Lowenthal was a supporter of high-speed rail, but when it came down to voting over the summer, he was a vote against high-speed rail. He had concerns, I guess, about how it was being structured. And so when he gets to Congress, if he does, we're concerned. What would you say to them?
I would say that, look at my record. I helped to put out the high-speed rail initiative. I held maybe 10 or 12 hearings as the chair of transportation and chair of high-speed rail, the select committee on high-speed rail. I asked to see a good business plan. I asked to see where the ridership numbers were. And so while I've always been strongly supportive of high-speed rail, the state put up $10 billion, the federal government only put up $3 billion.
True.
And the federal government came in and said, we want you to start building that high-speed rail in the Central Valley. I thought without a real commitment from the federal government and continued funding, that was a high-risk strategy, that a lower-risk strategy would have been to start funding the high-speed rail where there are riderships in the LA area and in the San Francisco. Start at the ends. not start in the middle. If I get to Congress, I will fight to have additional high-speed rail money. We now have a track in the Central Valley that we must connect between Bakersfield and LA to make this work. That's the next step. No high-speed rail system in the world has ever been built without federal funding. I'm an advocate of it. I just wish we had started in a more rational, lower risk strategy rather than a high risk
Which
strategy.
many understand, but what we also know is if the state did not appropriate that money this summer, the state was at risk of losing the $3 billion.
Not true.
Well, disabuse me.
Because the only appropriation this coming year is an appropriation of a little bit over $1 billion, not $6 to $7 billion. I would have appropriated that. That would have been a low-risk strategy. The only requirement from the federal government was that the money needed to be appropriated and spent by the year 2017.
And are we going to meet that deadline?
We'll meet that deadline. Unfortunately, I think that we're putting it in the highest risk place in the world, and that's in the Central Valley. Nothing against the Central Valley. If there were unlimited resources, you can start it anywhere. But we are talking about a project that's going to cost $60 to $100 billion. It is fiscally responsible to say we're going to build that in segments, let each segment stand on its own, and to be able to make money on its own. If we had started in the urban areas, we could have electrified the urban area concept, and we could have had ridership right away. But that was my objection.
As I understand it, there is money set aside as part of the over the summer appropriation for those urban areas.
Yes.
So talk to us about that and what that may do to help the complete
Right now,
project.
you mean the money that we put? That was because of my standing out and saying it.
Okay.
Originally, the governor and the president had asked to spend $6 billion alone just in the Central Valley. Because I raised these questions, because I said, why are we not funding the urban areas where there are real ridership, they moved $2 billion, a little over $1 billion for Los Angeles, and $1 billion, a little less for the Caltrain in San Francisco. I thought that was appropriate money. I wish that's all the money we had started with to spend.
But will those funds help to make a connected state more of a reality?
Yeah, of course they did. But again, I think that the biggest problem that we have is how you connect the Los Angeles area to the Central Valley. Right now, you have to take a bus. And even with this funding, you have to take a bus. It doesn't help us when there is no additional funding allocated and you have to take a bus to see the track. I think that was a high-risk strategy.
We also know that there have been discussions about trying to create some form of CEQA exemption for high-speed rail, California Environmental Quality Act exemption. That did not go.
That's right.
And so whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I'm not commenting. But what I do know is that could bottle up the construction in litigation for years. Am I correct?
It could be. I think, again, the litigation, the difficult one is the agricultural community in the Central Valley raising some issues that it's cutting across farmland. I hope that it doesn't do that. I hope that they have all the environmental documents cleared. But that's really where the issue is, and that's one of the reasons I thought that it was a high-risk strategy to start in the Central Valley.
Presuming you're successful on November 6th, what are your goals as you get to Congress in January?
Well, one is to continue to fight for infrastructure and transportation. I want to fight for the high-speed rail. I want that connection to be there. Now that we've committed ourselves to building it, I think is fine. I thought it would have started in the urban areas. Now we have to connect the urban areas to the Central Valley. That can only be done with private money and also with federal funds.
But if the Democrats were not to take the House back, which some say actually could happen,
Yes.
there is a challenge because
Yes.
the Republican Party in Congress has not been so keen on infrastructure projects over the last few years.
Absolutely. The Ryan budget cuts significantly the infrastructure projects. The president is proposing with the American Jobs Act and with his budget to fund infrastructure. The Republicans would like to cut back on
But are you ready to be in the minority? You've been in the majority for so many years in Sacramento.
I'm hoping to be in the majority, Brad.
Well, some have said it is possible. We'll see. His name is Alan Lowenthal. He is a member of the California State Senate. He is running for the United States Congress. Of course, that election will be held on November 6th. My name is Brad Pomerance. You're watching California Edition. We'll be right back. This is California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. Our guest, Robert Garcia, the Vice Mayor of the city of Long Beach, which is a city who had a thriving redevelopment agency and a city that has been sorely disappointed by redevelopment's demise. Really tell me, Mr. Garcia, how the demise of redevelopment has impacted your city and others for that matter.
Well, it's been huge, and I think that obviously one of the worst things that happened this year as part of the governor's budget proposal was elimination of redevelopment. And I think that redevelopment was actually an economic tool that California had. It's a really positive thing for cities. We're able to do a lot of really great things. We're talking about opening up acres of park space, miles of streets and sidewalks kind of being fixed, new developments coming in. In Long Beach alone, you had incredible projects that benefited from redevelopment, and that's really the case in most cities.
I want to ask you, I'm sure you've heard the same statements I've heard from the mayor of San Bernardino, the mayor of Stockton. Both cities went bankrupt, and they both said that the demise of redevelopment was one of the main reasons why they went upside down. Do you buy it?
Well, I think partly that was part of it, but they also didn't do very good planning. I mean,
Fair enough.
The reality is that smart cities that use their dollars correctly, like Long Beach, didn't need redevelopment to survive. You know, we're going to survive. We're going to do fine without it. But certainly, the pace of growth, the pace of economic growth and economic development, will be slowed.
Earlier this year, it felt as if there would be some type of deal to create some version of redevelopment, be it focused on affordable housing exclusively, or to allow cities or counties to vote for redevelopment locally with a 55% vote. I've heard nothing. Yeah,
I mean, there's not a lot going on right now. I think that right now the governor is really focused on trying to get November past him. I think we'll probably re-engage in redevelopment after the November election. But we're trying to do our own things in Long Beach. The reality is that there's still economic development work to do. And so we're looking at ways of being creative, being out of the box, and kind of moving forward.
Let's talk about it, Mr. Vice Mayor, because you have spearheaded a move to create a city position that would be focused exclusively, like a laser beam, on economic development.
Absolutely. I mean, it's sad that Long Beach, for a city of its size, doesn't have its own economic development bureau
but it kind of did with redevelopment.
It did, absolutely. And a few years ago, they even had a general fund position for that as well. So what we're doing is going to be hiring an economic development officer that's solely focused on being an ambassador to business, an ombudsman for business. So if a business is having a problem opening up, or they're having maybe some concern at planning or permitting, that person will go in and advocate for them. This person will be in charge of out there recruiting, traveling, trying to bring in businesses, making connections, and trying to walk a business through every step of the way of opening in Long Beach. And in addition, they're going to work on retaining businesses. So talking about what are some of the tax programs that are out there, some of the small business loans that are out there. We don't have that, believe it or not, in the city of Long Beach. One person dedicated to that, and so that's what this person's going to do.
Do you have enterprise zones in Long Beach?
We do.
So that's a benefit.
Absolutely, huge benefit enterprise zone is. But we also need someone to be aggressively going out there beyond the work that we're doing as council members and the mayor and so forth. But we need to be out there going to conferences, talking to different companies, and bringing them to Long Beach. So the future of Long Beach is the new economy, and that's going to be tech, green, and creative jobs.
But how do you, and what tools do you have to lure businesses, either from other cities to lure businesses that may be new? I mean, redevelopment was, you can say a lot of things about redevelopment, but as I understand it, really was a very effective tool, sometimes abused, to lure business.
Well, redevelopment was the key thing that we had in our pocket, no question about it. But there are a lot of other really great things as well. I think the one thing that Long Beach has, that a lot of Southern California has, is the climate. So there's nothing better out there than people want to be here. People want to work here.
And the ports.
And the ports. We have the largest economic engine in the country, one of the largest in the world, just in our backyard here at the Port of Long Beach. We have a great airport that's being renovated right now with an all-new terminal, which will be beautiful, and it'll be a great attraction for people. We have incredible manufacturing, development opportunities over by the airport at the Boeing facility, and we just had some exchange happening there to build some more manufacturing there as well. So those things are in place. Our downtown is growing and changing and getting better, I think, by the day. And so those are things I think that businesses want to see. On the other side, there are also things that the city can offer. Besides the enterprise zones that you're talking about, the city also works with Long Beach City College, as well with Cal State Long Beach, for a variety of different small business programs, small business loans. We have the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Program that's here and working with people, giving them capital, access to capital. And we also have a variety of different facade programs. If you're a small business and you want to open up some little store in one of our corridors, the city's going to give you
that was a redevelopment program, I presume.
Right, but that continues in a lot of ways. Part of our community block grant program is we will give you money to open up, to maybe for your sign, maybe for a little paint, so you can kind of spruce up your business a little more. Those are things that Long Beach is doing. What we need to do more aggressively, though, is beyond that work, is we need to get out out of Long Beach. We need to be out in other cities. We need to be out across the country, bringing those high-tech companies to Long Beach, green companies to Long Beach, expanding the creative class.
Is part of the challenge that Long Beach resides in the state of California, which has been labeled as an environment that is just overregulated?
Well, I think there's always an opportunity to kind of cut more red tape, and there's no question that California is overregulated in many areas. And so, obviously, as a city official, there's only so much we can do. We don't have that much control over what Sacramento does. I wish we did, but we don't. And so what we can do here in Long Beach is cut our own red tape. We can bring someone on, which we're going to do with this economic development position, to serve as an ombudsman for business and just make opening a business easier to do. And that's something we've been doing. We've been focusing on local preferences for local small businesses in the area. And so those are all part of kind of tools in the toolbox.
But how critical is Sacramento to this equation? Because it does seem as if California continues to be perceived, whether it's fair or not, as overregulated, it becomes very difficult for Long Beach to compete with Las Vegas.
Well, I mean, absolutely. I mean, it is. There's no question that in California, it is difficult to open a business and to maintain a business because of the amount of regulation that's in place. Now, look, some regulation is important. We want to have clean air. We want to be a leader in clean water. We want people to be safe with their workplace. So those things are important. I think California, in a lot of ways, has been a leader when you look at those things and other areas like equitable facilities,
right,
for
but
example.
What's interesting is you're a registered Democrat. You're known as being an active Democrat, and you're saying this. And your colleagues on the Republican side of the aisle are saying the same thing. And I keep hearing it over and over and over. We need to get a hold of regulations, and yet not a lot happens. We have, regulatory reform at the margins.
Right.
But we don't see the regulatory reform that cities need to lure business from Las Vegas to Long Beach.
Absolutely. And I think that the redevelopment kind of fiasco is a perfect example of what happened there. All the cities across the state were united, kind of saying, we need this redevelopment. It is our main economic tool. And then we had essentially the Republicans in the legislature being the ones kind of carrying the water on redevelopment.
And what's ironic is I heard one Republican a Republican assemblyman say that redevelopment was a Democratic program that benefits Republicans.
Right.
And yet it was the Republicans who were defending this very Democratic type program.
I mean, the reality is that redevelopment, in my opinion, helped everybody. Yes, it helped business owners and developers because they're the ones that are building.
But the double calamity for supporters of redevelopment is that there was a compromise solution that would allow cities to pay a ransom if they wanted to keep their agencies open. But the League of California Cities sponsored Prop 22 that passed just 2 years ago that prevented the state from taking city dollars. Right. And so the California Supreme Court says you can't do a ransom.
Right.
Disaster.
The whole thing was a disaster. And what's sad about what's happened in Long Beach is we had dozens of projects that were essentially funded or were to be funded through redevelopment that are now gone. I mean, we're talking about projects, particularly in North Long Beach, where we had blocks and blocks of of land that was going to be, theater space and new Starbucks and new small businesses that were going to be growing. We're talking about doing a new library.
Are you fighting with the state's Department of Finance about projects that purportedly should be allowed to continue, but they say, oh no, they weren't in the pipeline soon enough?
Absolutely. I mean, we have those projects that we're fighting for, but fortunately, I think Long Beach, because we were responsible in the way we spent our redevelopment dollars and spent them quickly, a lot of the projects that were in the pipeline are being built. And a perfect example of that is downtown, the Promenade. The Promenade is a redevelopment project. We hadn't started the north block of the Promenade, which is the last kind of block and a half, including Harvey Milk Park, which was part of that development. And fortunately, we were able to, we just got it done quick. We saw what was happening, and we just went as quick as possible.
His name is Robert Garcia. He's the Vice Mayor of the City of Long Beach. I'm Brad Pomerance. This is California Edition. Welcome back to California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. I'm glad you're still with us. Our guest is Larry Forrester. He is a member of the City Council in Signal Hill, which is where?
Signal Hill is the hole in the donut.
It is.
It's the very center of Long Beach. It's one of those unusual cities, which I believe there's only 4 in the United States, that has a city surrounding it 360 degrees.
How did it happen?
Oil and gas was discovered in Signal Hill in 1921. We were unincorporated LA County. Long Beach discovered the same field, found that they could put up a barrel tax on it. Biggest pumping wells were Signal Hill, so they thought, oops, we should go get those. So they went and attempted to get those, and the forefathers of Shell and Texaco said to the state, we don't want to be part of it. What do we do? The state said, you own the land, 2.2 square miles. You can control the voting population, all the oleas that brought in from Oklahoma.
Oh my.
So they became a general law city in April of 1924, and then Long Beach annexed everything around us.
Literally.
Literally.
Did they ever try to annex you?
They had tried, but they weren't successful.
Too late.
Yeah, it was too late.
So let's talk about Signal Hill and challenges facing many municipalities. As you know, we've seen some municipalities go under recently, San Bernardino, Stockton, some other ones are at risk. How is Signal Hill faring? Because with the elimination of redevelopment, we know that has really hit some bottom lines of some of our greatest cities.
We have done something that is unlike a lot of other cities. I don't know if they ever expressed to you the term no low property tax city. That means we get less than 4% of our general fund, or $400,000 a year from a 17-something general fund, out of property taxes. Our citizens pay the same property taxes as everybody else, but the state and the county keep the money.
Why?
And that came out of the 1920s when we had oil and gas money, when property taxes first came about. And they said, we don't need it, so we'll keep it.
Oh my.
So
that presents challenges, I would presume.
And when Proposition 13 came in the 70s, it froze us. It said you couldn't change. So redevelopment had come about in the late 50s, and we got on board in the 70s and allowed us to put 2/3 of our city in redevelopment, and we now generate 70% of our general fund from sales tax. That's all because of redevelopment.
Which I guess is a good thing when the economy is strong. But there are challenges surrounding sales tax.
And that's where I was going to go to next. We looked at 10 years ago, because we knew we were so vulnerable and we knew what each car dealership could do if we lost it.
Right.
We started an economic uncertainty fund and built it up over the years. And in the last 3 years, we've literally been living off of economic uncertainty reserves. And this past year, we've been able to start building up the reserves again.
What do the bond agencies say about that?
They had no problem with it. I mean, we are fiscally sound as far as ability to pay the bonds, because the bonds that we have, basically the redevelopment bonds, are what's called tax increment. That is property tax portion that we get to keep. It's literally, people argue with me, well, you're not giving the state their money. No, it's not the state's money. It's Signal Hill's property taxes.
But the state, as you know, has been very aggressive as it relates to whether cities can keep certain portions of prior redevelopment deals.
Absolutely.
Is that what you're referencing?
Well, pretty much so. What I'm saying is that property tax that we were using is our own property taxes that we're getting back. Now, where we've been very lucky now is that most of our projects are done. We have probably 4 or 5 that are still on, I think they call it ROPS.
But is the state fighting that? Because, that's the challenge. And we know
the Department of Finance is going after that money. They want to, and I think you know that the original AB 1X26 was to generate $1.7 billion for this year. They're lucky to get $500 million.
I've heard that it is below $1 billion.
Yeah. So, but what we were able to do is sit down with people like Alan Lowenthal and State Senator and Bonnie Lowenthal and others and say, how do we fight? How do we go back to Department of Finance? And via those routes, we've been able to basically have Department of Finance look at and say, okay, well, we won't take it now, but we'll have you put it on the ROPS for the next session.
Yeah, there are cities, I know a few in the San Gabriel Valley, who had to sue.
Absolutely.
And as it stands now, I don't think their lawsuits are going as well as they had hoped.
No, and we're part of a lawsuit with the city of Cerritos.
Okay.
And the League of California Cities. But we've been very lucky in making our case. You have the oversight board, which is supposed to say yay or nay, and it's got the 7 representatives on it. The Department of Finance is the bottom line.
But a bigger question may be, is there a future for redevelopment? Because what we had heard when redevelopment was eliminated earlier in 2012 was that the legislature would come back and try to create some form of redevelopment. It could be maybe focused on affordable housing. Governor Brown floated this idea that maybe will allow cities, counties to pass their own redevelopment initiatives, 55% of the vote instead of 2/3. Those went by the wayside.
Yeah. Well, you have to understand in what I have surmised from AB 26-1X and AB 27, the legislature never thought 26 would stand up. They thought they'd have 27, which is the ransom.
Which is so very interesting, and let's talk about that, because I think it's fair to say that as you described, as part of the compromise, cities would have been able to keep redevelopment agencies open in some form if they paid the state, as you call it, a ransom. But what happened? The voters passed Prop 22 in 2010, which said there could be no rates of state dollars.
So 27 suddenly became unconstitutional.
Right.
And then 26 became and was voted constitutional on its framework.
Right.
Not on its internals, because we've actually sued separately on the internals because it violates constitutional law when you have a contract between two private industries that one can't pay the other.
But literally, it was the worst scenario for those
Absolutely.
that were supporting redevelopment. The entire bill was upheld, and the compromise to keep redevelopment open was struck down.
Yeah, and then we sued again with cities Cerritos and Downey to say, look, at contractual law within 26 has got to be honored.
So where are we now?
Well, the judge came back to us and said it's not ripe. Now,
When does it become ripe?
He said after you've gone through and shown that you cannot get that money. I mean, you literally have to prove that it's not, that they have tried to take it and you fought it. You can't say it at the beginning. Now, what we've done now is we've been very lucky to have an excellent staff. They have put together for the Department of Finance and done a meet and greet, not a meet and confer, a meet and greet with the Department of Finance.
I see.
And they're the bottom line. I mean, they report to nobody.
Yeah, but well, they report to the governor.
Not really.
But I guess what I'm saying is, they're part of the administration, and we know
Yes.
where the administration is on
Yes.
redevelopment.
So-
Even though Mayor Brown became Governor Brown, and Mayor Brown of Oakland used redevelopment, he's done with it. I mean, he's been very clear.
Yeah, his love of the teachers union said more than that.
I don't know about that, but be that as it may.
I mean, I won't.
You can say it. That's fine.
Okay.
I mean, I love that you're here, and I thank you for that. So let's look forward. What are you doing to fill that gap, that hole, both literally and metaphorically?
What we're doing is we've been very lucky that we're able to maintain sales in that. I mean, we dropped 36% in overall sales for sales tax.
But
in the last
but
3
you're
years.
bouncing back, no?
We're bouncing back, and our automobile dealerships are the first ones to come back. And we've actually got another 2 automobile dealerships that are looking at Signal Hill right now. We were able to take a Cadillac dealership that was in Long Beach, and because of our
You thieves, you stole from another city. But you know what, I joke, but yes, I mean, that's part of what happens. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a reality.
And, you know, let's go to the basics. We never stole any automobile dealerships.
You know I'm jesting.
Yes.
Yeah.
They came to us because they knew
Right.
redevelopment and Long Beach was not helping them on Long Beach Boulevard. But in the Cadillac situation, what happened was Boulevard, Buick, which exists, was able to get the building next door, which used to be Chrysler. When they bought Coast Cadillac, GM said to them, you know, it would be great if you get the 2 moved next to each other.
There you have it. I want to thank you for joining us, Larry Forster, and I want to ask that you promise you'll come back.
Absolutely.
You're a good man. He is on the council in Signal Hill. My name is Brad Pomerance. We'll be right back on California Edition.